The World Cup is in full swing, so let's take a look at the best international prospects in the 2023 draft. This is Floor and Ceiling, let's break it down. First up, we have Rayan Rupert. The 18-year-old French wing is playing in the Australian NBL for the New Zealand Breakers. It's a very similar path that his fellow countryman Ousmane Ndiaye took last year, and Ndiaye ended up as a lottery pick, but there are some differences. My biggest takeaway from Rupert's experience down under so far is just how much more of his game we're seeing. At the youth levels with France, Rupert's projection was always more of a 3-and-D type. Broadly, I still expect NBA teams to ask that from him right off the bat, but he's shown more sauce than that. With the Breakers, Rupert is empowered to push the ball off rebounds. He can grab and go, where he plays with pace and long strides. Rupert isn't stiff either, he's able to change directions and finish. So far in the NBL, he's been a genuine threat in these situations. The Frenchman is also running some pick and roll, where again, the results are probably better than anticipated. His handle can be a bit loose, and Rupert is raw still. This shouldn't be too surprising though given the circumstances, but I'm encouraged by the flashes of an 18-year-old rangy wing doing this against experienced pros. For instance, it really benefits him to get this rep, and it ends in Rupert making the pull-up too. Getting into his shot, it's still a work in progress. The first thing to note is that it mostly looks fine. He has a high release point that's tough to block, and he can get into his jumper in multiple ways. Sure, the percentages during the NBL season don't look great at a bit over 20% from deep, but that goes up to 39% from 3 over 12 games if you include preseason. Eventually, I think Rupert ends up as a solid enough shooter. It's a tiny sample size, and we can't read into it too much. Of course, shooting 86% from the line helps his case. Some of Rupert's struggles with efficiency come when he has to create for himself in one-on-one situations. However, I don't really expect this to be his role down the line. Obviously, I don't want too many of these tough fadeaways, and he's gonna have to cut down on these. But Rupert's biggest improvement area for me is finishing at the rim. So far this season, he's shooting below 40% from the field. Again, it's a small sample size, but that's gonna need to go up regardless. In the months to come, I want to see him make strides when it comes to finishing in traffic and through contact. Rupert doesn't exactly shy away from physicality, which is nice, and he's a fairly good athlete, so I think it's more of a technique issue. Something that stands out to me is that the Breakers wing jumps off 1 foot a lot of the time, so he kinda gets stuck under the rim, and that makes him prone to getting blocked. Looking down the other end of the floor, Rupert most definitely has two-way potential. In fact, his defense is one of my favorite parts about him. In layman's terms, Rupert is a pest. He's big, long, and tireless on this side of the ball. At 6'7" with a 7'3" wingspan, Rupert has ideal size for a wing, but it's more than that. Even at this early stage of his development, I already love his activity and engagement. Rupert is one of those rare teenagers who I think can already be a plus on defense. Most definitely, his impact on this end goes beyond the box score. Like we see in this clip, Rupert can pick up full court and really harass and bully ball handlers. But I also want to highlight these clips which show his versatility and understanding. Here, Rupert has to pick up the big in transition. He fronts him to prevent the easy pass twice, which is already impressive, but then rotates on the drive and stays vertical to deny at the rim. In the same game, Rupert is hounding the guard full court. He forces him to give up his dribble, switches onto former NBA player Mitch Creek and stonewalls his drive, and finally, Rupert switches again and leads the ball handler to the big to get blocked. As of right now, I would feel comfortable picking Rupert as early as the middle of the first round. Moving to Serbia, we have Nikola Đurišić. Đurišić is a crafty 6'8" ball handler who plays for Mega in the Adriatic League. There's no doubt that the package overall is interesting, especially when he gets hot as a shooter. We saw that when Đurišić played Overtime Elite this summer, for example, in a game that probably put him on the map in a slightly bigger way. But the Serbian has long been a focal point at youth levels for his club, where there's little doubt about his status as one of Mega's most promising prospects. At this point, I primarily consider Đurišić a scorer, but he's also shown the ability to create for others. It's nothing crazy, but he can run pick and rolls and find his bigs with pocket passes. This was really apparent in the Adidas Next Generation Youth Tournament. Đurišić can also get into the paint and find his bigs in other creative ways. However, I also really think that he has plenty of improvement areas. The biggest one for me is his finishing at the rim. Yeah, this sounds similar to Rupert, but it's in a totally different way. The first thing is that the 18-year-old Serb can have a really tough time finishing to his left. We see that here over these clips, and I'm sure you can see why I'm worried about this. It's a combination of things for sure, but one of them that stands out when it comes to making a step up to the NBA is Đurišić's lack of burst. Of course, not every prospect needs to be a monster athlete, but it worries me that this can already prove to be an issue for him now when he's facing off against objectively poorer athletes. Yes, Đurišić can offset that with his craftiness at times. That means his footwork, his head fakes, his hezzies. I like the pace that he plays at, and often the game goes at his own speed. But I'm not sure yet if he does this enough or really at a high enough level. Like we touched on earlier, Đurišić shows shooting potential, but he's much more streaky than he is consistent. The percentages this season are very improvable, but it's a small sample size, so I'm not going to get into that too much. Rather, my question with Đurišić is whether he can adapt to a role where he's not the featured player. As Đurišić looks to make the step up to the NBA and get to that next level, I expect that he's at least going to have to partly become more of an off-the-ball player. We've seen some flashes this season for Mega's first team, but there's a big adjustment curve here. For example, it's a big difference going from mostly shooting off the dribble to mostly taking spot-up looks. So is going from having the ball in your hands for 15 seconds to only 2 or 3 seconds. Right now, I'm intrigued by Đurišić's package, the playmaking and the shooting at that size, but I also have plenty of questions, which for now, leave him in the second round for me. Third up, we take a trip to Barcelona for Nigerian big man James Nnaji. Nnaji is one of those guys who's gonna excel in a low volume role. He doesn't do anything too fancy, and maybe his ceiling isn't as high as other prospects, but I think his floor is. On offense, Nnaji is mostly going to catch and finish. 6'10" with super long arms that will break down shortly and a chiseled grown man's frame. The catch, of course, is that he doesn't even turn 19 until August of next year. In the NBA, I expect Nnaji to be used a lot as a finisher in pick and roll situations. This is the ideal role for him, and he's always been super efficient, shooting around 75% from the field. That number is down this season as he's starting to get pro minutes. Again, it's a small sample size though, and I'd expect that trend to eventually continue. This means that Nnaji will be dependent on point guards to create for him, and I'm not sure if he ever stretches the floor to any extent at all. But that's not really a knock on him so much as it's just a reality. He flashed some face-up stuff at youth levels, but that's never gonna be his bread and butter. The Barca big's strong suit though is his rebounding. Nnaji is incredible here, and he deserves to be in contention for best rebounder of the 2023 draft. The first thing I want to highlight is that Nnaji has good and big hands. He gobbles up boards, but this is not by coincidence. If you watch Nnaji, you'll see how he competes for position with float-overs and clears out space when he crashes the glass. It's technique, but it's also competitiveness. When you factor in Nnaji's hands, strength, size, and technique, alongside his 7'7" wingspan, it's just super tough to contain him. So sit back and watch Nnaji snatch up rebounds. There's an art to this, and at just 18 years old, he's already more advanced in it than a lot of other bigs both coming into the league and, quite frankly, already in the NBA. Other grown men in Spain are already finding this out. I'm also a big fan of Nnaji's potential on defense. Let's start from the outside and make our way closer to the paint. Nnaji is really physical and looks chiseled out of marble, but he's not a plodding big or stiff by any means. If anything, the Nigerian center is surprisingly light on his feet, and he covers tons of ground. Nnaji is agile enough to step out to the perimeter, switch, and contain guards. He's fluid and flexible too, able to bend his hips and knees to get down in a stance and make life difficult for attackers. We see that here, for instance. Getting into the paint, Nnaji is also capable of playing in a drop or hanging back at the rim. He's versatile, so you can plug him into more than one defensive scheme. The Nigerian big man has got quick pop and he times himself really well. When you pair that with the space he can quickly cover, that becomes really dangerous. So sure, Nnaji isn't the flashiest prospect, but I think he can be a big with few flaws in his game who is really effective in his role once he masters it. Right now, I think a late first, early second round grade on him is more than fair. Finally, we have one of my big sleepers for this year, Ousmane Ndiaye from Senegal. Ndiaye is still a bit of an unknown commodity and he may very well be more of a 2024 prospect, but it's still good to start tracking him now. A lot of these clips are from the German 3rd division, so bear with me if the quality isn't as great. Ndiaye had been showing interesting flashes in Germany for years, and he moved to Spain this summer, where he's now playing in the Spanish 3rd division for Baskonia's second team. What piques my interest about Ndiaye is that he can potentially pass, dribble, and shoot at 6'10", 6'11". He's still really raw and finding his exact role because he can still be molded into either a really big wing or a big with the skill set of a wing. Similar tools, but also totally different roles. However, it's hard to not be intrigued by a teenager that size, who can bring the ball up in transition and splash a three. And then he's just as capable of coming up with big blocks at the rim, or making quick reads to find his teammates. To be clear, these are not exactly the norm, not at all really. Ndiaye is a flashes-filled prospect, but he doesn't do any of these things consistently enough just yet. You'll also find sequences where he misses shots, has unforced turnovers, or is undisciplined on defense. But I really believe that Ndiaye is somebody NBA teams should look at and get into their developmental systems as quickly as possible to continue to build up. If I was to make an entire video on Ndiaye right this second, honestly, I wouldn't really be able to place a verdict on him, but in a way that's also what makes him so appealing. This season with Baskonia's second team, Ndiaye has started playing the 5 more often. This is interesting because I think there's definitely a big learning curve for him here, given that he played the 3 or the 4 a lot more in Germany. Obviously, the athletic package is there and it's very enticing, but Ndiaye doesn't always know quite how to leverage it. I'll be keeping an eye on that development as the season goes along, but to cap this video off, I want to focus on all the good. The biggest thing right now, and that's sort of where all the rest of his game is going to come from, is his shooting. Ndiaye has really solid, compact mechanics. He's not really efficient at this point in his career, but I'm more focused on the process. For the most part, Ndiaye takes shots that make sense and are within the flow of his team's offense. He's not a ball hog or a prospect who randomly jacks up shots. His footwork, generally speaking, is encouraging. Ndiaye can get into his jumper using short, choppy steps, and also create for himself a little bit with step backs and things of the like. Just as important for me when it comes to his overall potential is the shot diversity. Again, he's so raw that buying into what could be rather than what is right now is, I think, more valuable. And I think it gives more insight into what his teams who are around him every day see in Ndiaye. In just these few minutes, we've seen him pull up off the dribble, in transition, off movement. Again, 2023 might be too early for Ndiaye and he might not even be looking to put his name into the draft just yet. Definitely he could benefit from some more seasoning. But at the same time, like I said, if I'm an NBA team, I'd really consider buying low on him right now and picking him in the second round before his stock potentially blows up. So we have 2 first-round prospects, Rayan Rupert, who I would feel comfortable picking right outside the lottery, probably right in the 15s and the 20s, and then James Nnaji, who I would feel comfortable either ending the first round or definitely in the 30s. With Nikola Đurišić, I have more questions, but I do think he's worth a second round look, and Ousmane Ndiaye is a guy that I would invest in right now and look to develop in the future. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a comment, tell me who you think are your best international prospects in this year's draft, and if you enjoy the channel, make sure to subscribe. Take care, and I'll catch you guys next time.